Welcome to the Noir Poise podcast, where wisdom is power is more than just a motto.
It's our way of life. While we don't claim to have all the answers, we're dedicated to delving deeper into different topics through meaningful conversations. As a duo, we bring different viewpoints to the table, enriching our joint journey towards growth and poise.
Join us as we explore and unlearn to relearn while striving to navigate life with poise. I've heard this so many times I can't count at this point. And I think I know your answer, but I want to ask you anyway. Do you think men are simpler than women when it comes to dating or in relationships in general?
I would certainly say yes. I think men are much more simpler, and I just had to do some mental gymnastics.
Yeah, I was looking at you like, why are you laughing?
Just to be sure, because I actually think that while women are particular about most things, when a man is particular about something, he's very particular about it. But overall, I would say definitely men are simpler.
Okay. And do you think men or women request more from the other gender in a relationship, or is it equal?
No, I think women definitely request more.
Okay.
I think because men are simple, we don't ask for much. And our ask for much may be much to you, just like a woman saying we don't ask for much is much for us. But for my take...
So in other words, your answer is kind of biased because you're a man.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think.
Teasing.
I'm trying to think objectively as well.
Okay, so I asked you that because I randomly ran into a video where this woman was going through some stats that they've taken from men and women who went on first dates. And the women stated that if they get a man who has 80% of what they want, that wasn't enough. You keep laughing. And the men, if they got 80% of what they wanted, they found that to be a win.
Mm-hmm.
I personally agree with the men.
As far as if you found 80% of what you want, you would consider it a win?
Absolutely. I feel like that is a win. I mean, it also depends on what the 20% is, though, because there are deal breakers. But nonetheless, there's no one that's perfect out there. No one's going to have 100% of what you want.
But I think that's the falsehood of it. People have the idea that I am going to find 100% of what I want.
Right.
There.
I do believe that that's the case. And if it's not 100, people are focused on like 98%.
Yeah.
And not just that, I also feel like what they want is ridiculous. I kind of feel like I shouldn't say it's ridiculous because everyone's standards are different, right? What someone requests in a relationship is not going to be standard across the board.
Yeah.
So what I desire from a man is not going to be the same as the next woman. And what you desire from a woman is not going to be the same as the next man. But these days, I don't know. Maybe I'm just old school. I'm not that old. But like when I hear people talk about like the dating world, and thank God I never had to really experience it because I would fail. Like I'd be single my whole life. Like it just wouldn't work out for me. I'm so glad I don't have to experience it in my 30s. But I feel like a lot of things people are requesting from one another, it's ridiculous to me. I don't know how else to say it. Sometimes I'm like, do you really need that though? I feel like a lot of people confuse what they need versus what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And these checklists that people have these days tend to be a lot of what they would like.
Yeah.
But it's not a necessity. And I don't think people recognize that it's not a necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people just want to get a finished product. So
that's a good way to put it.
There's nothing wrong with having certain desires in another person. Like you like what you like. But I think the problem comes when you meet someone that's maybe 60 or 70%. And because they're 60 or 70, you think this will never work out. You don't stop to think to yourself, the remaining 30 or 40%, maybe I can help build that with them. But what I was also going to say is I've actually heard people say this before where they meet someone who's actually 100% of what they want, but then there's no spark. So that causes them to to kind of disqualify the person. So it's rough out there.
And that goes back to what I said, because if you meet someone who's 100% of what you want, there should be that spark, shouldn't there? But that just shows that a lot of what people are requesting from a significant other can often be a little bit unrealistic, or more so, it's not a necessity.
Yeah.
You know, I hear women say it all the time, and I'm obviously going to speak from the woman's perspective because that's what I hear from like people, that they focus on like finances, physique, status, title, career, you know, little things like that. Does he have his own place? And I'm like, how is that a necessity? Because that can always be attained.
Yeah.
Like for me, when I think of necessities within a relationship, I think of the things that are more likely not able to change. So characteristics, traits, personality, like things that are embedded into the person that are not going to really change as time progresses. Yeah, there may be like growth, but there are some things I think that are within us that are just there. You know, like a kind-hearted person is a kind-hearted person. They may be able to shift that according to who they're dealing with based on their experience in life, but deep down, they're always a kind-hearted person. Whereas a man with 6 figures, he can be making 6 figures when you meet him, and 2 years later, he broke.
Right.
And he can also have the greatest body now at 25, but at 45, he looks like a Oompa Loompa. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I mean when I say people tend to, at least my opinion, I feel like people tend to confuse what a desire is versus what a necessity is. You don't need a man to be in good shape. Would you like a man to be in good shape? Yeah. But can he always work to get in good shape? Yeah. So I feel like stopping yourself from moving forward with someone just for that, again, my opinion, but I think it's a little ridiculous because I'm like, his physique is not going to hold your relationship down. It's not going to build your legacy. It's not going to take you where you would like to go in your future. Now, physique is important in my opinion. You got to like what you see too. You know what I mean? But I feel like that's something that can always be attained. And I'm always questioning the way people view things when it comes to that topic.
But in your opinion, since you are speaking from a woman's perspective, why do you think that so many people out there hold to that idea that their wants are their needs? Because you mentioned a couple of important things, such as, you know, finances, you know, appearance, which are all important. But if the majority of people, and we don't have data to back this up, but if the majority of people are thinking this way, I'm curious to know why.
I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know why people are thinking it. I do feel like a large part of it is because of what we've learned through our surroundings, that naturally women think that they got to have a 6 foot, 6-pack, 6 figure. You know what I mean? Like everything 6 is everything tall, brown, chocolate, whatever. Like I feel like we've been conditioned to think that that's what we want, because in most cases, like I said, that doesn't hold the relationship down. And while I'm speaking from the woman's perspective, I do hear men say unrealistic things too, if I'm honest. It's just not on the same level. Like men are not looking as much into finances as a woman may be looking into finances. But then when you kind of try to break that down, it makes sense because the man's role tends to be to provide. So of course you want him to be able to provide. Men may be looking at a woman, can she cook? You know, can she tap into some of her feminine qualities? But I do feel like our surrounding plays a big part on what we think we need. I think we've been conditioned to think that. And I honestly feel like some people are really uneducated on what makes a relationship work and what makes a relationship last.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the root of it, is not understanding what are the things that you actually need from someone in order to make it last.
Yeah.
I'd have to say, I feel like some people don't even know what they want in general, like from themselves. I feel like sometimes you think you want something and you get into a relationship with what you wanted and you realize it's not what you wanted.
Yeah.
So for me, I always feel like it's important to focus on what are the needs. What do you need from a significant other rather than what do you want from them? Now, there's nothing wrong with having wants and desires and having standards. And I hear people say this all the time. Can your standards be too high? I don't believe your standards can be too high because standards represents a level of excellence. But I do believe it can be unrealistic, especially if you're not that standard yourself.
I was just about to ask you what makes it unrealistic, but you answered it because I totally agree that there's certain standards that people have that there's nothing wrong with it itself. But like you just said, are you meeting that standard?
Right.
I've seen, and this goes both ways. I actually just saw somebody posted a screenshot of a dating app or something, and it was of a young woman who was obese.
Mm-hmm.
She was really overweight. In her bio, one of the things that she says she's looking for is an incredibly fit person.
See, that gets on my nerves.
And obviously people shared the screenshot because it seems contradicting.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes certain standards unrealistic.
Yeah.
You're not in shape, but you want someone
who's in shape.
Who's in shape. That's a make or break for you. Or you want someone to make six figures, but you're not bringing in a certain level of income as well. I think that's when the standards become a little bit unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I would actually boil it down to people feeling like they deserve better.
Mm-hmm. And what they are.
Than what they are. So I remember this is way before I met you. I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was always mature for my age, and I always had the mindset that I'm not going to date just to date. If I'm going to be with someone, it's because I see them as potentially becoming my wife one day.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, you're in school, you know, you're young. So there was one time I was in a train going home, and there was a cute girl looking at me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to approach her, but I don't remember if she went to the same school, but I knew that she wasn't, you know, the traditional Christian woman type thing. And it took everything inside of me to not approach her.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like she was waiting for me to approach her because we were eyeing each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget the moment I let her walk out. I was like, God better give me someone popping.
I'm done. You're
to
hilarious.
The point, and for people who don't know what I look like, I'm not a tall person, but in high school, in 9th grade, I said to myself, God's going to give me a supermodel.
That's hilarious.
It was because I felt like the sacrifice I'm making now, it better be worth it. It's a silly story, but I think that's how a lot of people think. Where, yeah, I might be, you know, really overweight, but I'm a really good person. So I think I deserve someone who's fit. Or I'm not bringing enough money, but you know, I can make people laugh. I'm good company. So I think I deserve someone who has a lot of money to take care of me. It's kind of like a trade-off in their mind.
I get what you're saying. I get that. And it makes me think of balance because obviously in relationships, there's balance, right? It's not always going to be the case where like, yeah, I'm making 6 figures, so he's making 6 figures. I got a 6-pack, so he got a 6-pack. That's not always the case. I think there's balance. That's why I keep saying I feel like certain things are attainable. So I don't think there's anything wrong with desiring the best of the best, right? But I think there's a level of acknowledgement that needs to be there to know that I'm not the best of the best. Let me do my part to get there. Now, it could be a situation where you meet that person and you're not there yet. But the point is you have the qualities and the characteristics that will get you to be the best of the best. And I always say this to you when we talk about stuff like this, because I feel like a lot of people focus so much on the materialistic things, the money, the appearance, the career, the title, the home, the car, so on and so forth. There's nothing wrong with wanting those things, in my opinion. There's nothing wrong with wanting a great woman or a great guy that compliments you, that looks good, that dresses nice. I don't think that's a problem. My issue with that is that people seek out for those things and don't focus on the qualities that will lead those people to those things. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've said this to you before. $1 million man, aside from the money, he could be making 20K. You will be able to pick out $1 million man, in my opinion. There are certain traits and characteristics that will always get a man or woman to where they need to be. Because my thing is, people are looking for the person who's making a lot of money, but they don't realize that there are certain attributes and certain qualities that has led that person to make a lot of money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So rather than focusing on how much is he making right now or how's her body right now, focus on the characteristics that's going to get that person there. So if she's super disciplined and consistent and she's aware that she needs to do better, I promise you, give her 6 months to a year, she's going to look different. Her ass going to be right and her abs going to be tight, you know? And a man who has the same discipline, consistency, a plan, the drive, the motivation, a man like that will always get to a place of making great money. So that's my thing. It's not necessarily that people are asking for too much, because I don't think there's anything wrong with having high standards or wanting great things. I think we should seek out to get great things. But before you seek out to get that great thing, one, are you prepared for that great thing? Are you a great thing? And what are the qualities of that man or that woman that's going to lead them to the great things? Because sometimes, like I said earlier, people will look at just those physical things and not recognize that, okay, so he got this gig because he just graduated out of school, or she got this gig because she just graduated out of school, but they don't have the qualities that's going to keep them moving up the ladder. In 2 years, that 6 figures can quickly shift to a no job.
Yeah.
If he doesn't know how to manage his finances and she doesn't know how to control her shopping or whatever the case may be, that's going to lead them down a path that's going to be completely different from what you meet them at when they're making great money, and vice versa.
So let me get this straight. You're essentially saying focus on the internal.
Yes.
But here's my question, because I agree, but I think the discrepancy, especially for people within our age group, is by 30s and 40s, they expect people to be at a certain level.
Right.
And not be building. What have you to show?
Yeah, I get that.
So the 6 figures, the body, I think people are expecting to see that because your whole life you're building up to that. And it's different than you're 23 and you're out of shape, or you're 23, you don't have your career settled, versus you're 35, you're 36, and you're still building towards those things, which is totally fine. But I think that's where the discrepancy is. So how does someone who's, in their 30s or 40s balance that way? Yeah, they're focusing on the internal, but they're interested in a person who still doesn't have their career figured out. Should that be a make or break? Should they be prepared to help support that person?
I totally get that. And I want to be clear about what I mean when I say the internal too. The internal, yeah, obviously, like, is he funny? Does he make you laugh? Is he kind-hearted? So on and so forth. But I'm speaking more so about the qualities and characteristics that will lead someone to the place that you desire your spouse to be. So an example with us is, when we met, we didn't have our, finances figured out. We were, we figured it out together. And sometimes I wonder, if I was in my 30s and I met you now, but you were still in the position that you were back then,
you'd be like, you bum.
No. A part of me would definitely question, why haven't you figured it out yet? Because the reality is, if you're in your 30s and you haven't figured out finances and other aspects of your life, it kind of demonstrates your history a little bit. It doesn't signify who you are, but it lays out a little outline of what you've been doing with your time. That's just my opinion. So I totally get women who feel that way, or men who feel that way, because it lets you know, like, okay, you were messing around in your 20s. You weren't focused. But what I was saying is, I would still give you the chance because you demonstrated certain qualities. And I tell you this all the time. you will always be successful because you have certain qualities in you that will always get you there. Even if you have to start over, God forbid, even if you have to start over 10 years from now, you have demonstrated certain qualities that will always cause you to move forward and advance. So that's what I mean when I say internal, not necessarily like, oh yeah, is he a nice guy? Is he respectful? Those are important, of course. But when I'm talking about finding a successful woman or man or the desires that you want that may be a little bit like these things are attainable, yes, they're attainable, but I'm not saying go settle with someone who doesn't have the characteristics that's going to get those things that are attainable. So if you're looking for someone who makes great money and has their finances figured out, how does he manage his money, the little that he has now? What is he doing with his money? Is he like flashing his cash so your money's not figured out? What kind of car are you driving? What are you into brand names because it's a brand name, or are you into quality clothing because it's quality? Do you get what I mean? Like, it's little things like that that I feel like is important to focus on, because that will then let you know, is he going to get to where you desire him to be financially, but is he going to stay there? Because that's another aspect of it too. He can be disciplined and consistent and have drive and be motivated, and he gets to somewhere, but if he doesn't know how to manage those finances, he's going to keep starting over.
Yeah.
And I think if you explain that to me and you say, yeah, there's this cycle or there's these traits that I noticed within him that will always lead him in a specific path, that I understand is a deal breaker. So that's what I mean when I say focusing on internal. But I feel like a lot of people focus on, oh, what does he do? Wait, you're still in school in your 30s? You know what I mean? Rather than focusing on the fact that this is a person who decided to go to school in his 30s, that alone says a lot about his character, in my opinion. You know what I mean? But you can't look at just one specific thing. You got to look at multiple things and see if these things align with the man that he says he wants to be and the man that you desire him to be. Do these things align? And if they don't, then yeah, deal breaker. I get that. But we hear it all the time that people are saying he ain't got six figures. He don't look the type that I want. He drives a hoopty, or he still lives at his mom's house. I totally understand how those things can represent what he's been doing with his time. But I know so many guys who figured it out later than the women did. And within a few years, transformation. But it's all about recognizing the skills and the qualities that they have, and then asking yourself, do I want to be down for the ride?
Yeah.
And that's okay. Some women don't want to be down for the ride, and some men don't want to be down for the ride. But I just don't think it's fair to focus on the material things and disregard the things that will naturally get him there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or get her there. I don't want to make it seem like it's all about
I was just about to say that.
Man, but it works both ways.
Yeah.
So here's the video that I heard where she discussed how women tend to have a little bit more unrealistic standards than men do, or quote unquote high standards.
Men and women were asked if they got 80% of everything they want in their ideal mate, would they be happy with that? And women said, no, that's settling. And men said, 80%, I'd be thrilled, that's a catch. And so
80% to the women you surveyed is settling?
That's settling because, the question is, what actually makes us happy in long-term romantic love? And, that's the question that I explore in the book. And I'm a journalist, so I went out and I asked neurobiologists about chemistry, and I asked behavioral economists about demographics, and I asked marital researchers and divorce lawyers.
What did they say? What did they say?
And, the thing is, we're too picky about the things that don't matter at all for long-term romantic happiness, but we're not picky enough about the things that actually do matter.
Okay, so break that out for me. What are women? It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple with men. Come on. What are women too picky about here?
Well, I'll tell you, men and women were asked what would be a deal breaker for going on a second date. And men named three things. They said she has to be cute enough. She doesn't have to look like Angelina Jolie. She just has to be cute enough. She has to be warm and kind. And she has to be interesting to talk to. Those seem like really valid criteria.
Ding, 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 ding. Pretty simple.
Right. Okay, reasonable, right? The women came back with 300 things that would rule out a guy for a second date. And we're talking about like another 2 hours and maybe a free dinner. And they wouldn't do it. And there were things like he wore a brown belt with black shoes. Or we were having a really good time and I thought he was cute and he was interesting, but then he did this Austin Powers impression and I just can't get that out of my mind and I can't go out with him again.
Okay, so you got to break that down
Me?
a little bit, yeah.
I don't agree. So, I believe it, but I don't agree that that's okay. You know, and I don't agree that that's okay. You know how I think. I do feel like that's ridiculous.
But you've stated before that you've heard certain comments. So even from the lessons you grabbed, could you break that down? What is the fear of that 80%, that missing 20%?
I really think it's that fairy tale mindset. I don't know if that's what it is, but that's what it sounds like to me. I don't think people are really focusing on what it takes to make a relationship work. I think they're focusing on the fairy tale aspects of it. How does he look? How will we look in pictures? How will people perceive him when they meet him? You know, little silly things like that. I mean, let me not say silly because it's okay to want to be attracted. You have to want to be attracted to who you're with. But even the example she said, like the color belt, that's ridiculous, bro. The example I'm sure is to be ridiculous when they were doing this survey, but it makes me think of women having an issue of how their men dress. It's pretty common, if I'm honest. I've heard a lot of women mention that, but not deal breaker with the women that I'm referring to. But I don't know how everyone else thinks out there. So I don't know, but I do think it's crazy.
I do agree with you that it's the fairy tale mindset.
Mm-hmm.
From the moment a girl is born, you know, they push into your mind that a prince is going to come save you and you're going to live happily ever after.
Yeah.
So I think it's different than guys. Like guys, we're not taught about who's going to be our significant other, you know? And I think that's what, going back to your question in the beginning, men are simpler. We really just want someone that's easy to talk to. Even, believe it or not, the way they look, I think a lot of men are willing to compromise.
Interesting. You think so?
So I think it's more common to find a fit man, for example, with an unfit female than it is for an unfit female to be with an unfit man.
That's interesting.
For the most part, not entirely, of course, but see past certain things and just go down to the basics. Could I live with you? Do we laugh together? Could we, hang out together? Do you annoy me? Like little basic things like that. I think females have always had that fairy tale mindset. So the fear, in my opinion, is you meet someone who you feel that doesn't fit that fairy tale mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not Prince Charming. They're just some average dude who's cool and everything, but what if you end up with him and later down the line you meet somebody better? I think that's always a fear in women's minds. So they're always trying to check off all their boxes
to find this unrealistic perfect man.
Well, to them, it seems like that person is real,
Mm-hmm. But I want to ask you, are you speaking from your perspective or are you speaking from, because the things that I'm saying, it's obviously not the way that I think and feel. It's not necessarily how the women that I meet feel all the time, but I have heard comments, if I'm honest. And I'm trying to think of how the women in society may think or feel about this particular topic. Based on what you just said, do you feel like that's the way you and men who are like you think? Because you also have to consider that just like there's different type of women, there's different type of men. I heard you say that men don't really ask for much, so on and so forth. I've heard men ask for a lot in different ways.
In your opinion, what's asking for a lot? Just so I could have a benchmark.
I mean, I played this video for you a couple of days ago. I don't know if you remember it, where the guy kind of broke down and said that we claim that women have such high standards, but men have unrealistic high standards as well. Again, and I said in the beginning of this episode, it's just not the same type of things, but you expect her to work the same way you work, keep her body right, even after postpartum, get back to what you used to look like, keep yourself together, take care of the kids, cook a hot meal, keep the house clean, still have energy to sleep with me tonight and give me a little, something, like all these things.
What's wrong with that? No, I'm kidding.
Nigga.
I just had to say, I'm going to cut that out.
Bro, I was about to look at you like, excuse me?
I'm just kidding.
I don't think there's anything wrong with desiring those things. But again, balance, understanding that that's not going to be every day all the time.
Yeah.
She tired.
Yeah.
You know, the same way you tired from just the 9 to 5 and putting the garbage out. She's tired.
Yeah.
But again, there are men out there who do have unrealistic expectations when it comes to the type of woman that they want. And I think a lot of, we also have to bring up the whole fact that some people want traditional spouses and they're modern.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. It's definitely not a one-way street. I have heard men make comments where it's like, I think it's a little too extra, but I think for the most part, the average guy is pretty simple. And I think the difference between the average guy and the average woman is, you see how you mentioned like the, keeping your body right, maintaining the house and working a 9 to 5. I've never heard a guy say his woman has to work. I've never heard like that. Well, actually, I just thought about one person, but
no, because I think people do say it. I think there are different type of guys. Again, just like there's different type of women.
That's what I'm saying. Like that, the average guy, because I just thought it was somebody that I know who said that before, but I wouldn't consider him the average guy because, no offense, but he was a jerk.
What's the average guy? Because maybe we have we live in a bubble. I just want to point this out because I appreciate the things that you're saying, but I want to remind you that we live in a little bubble where we are and our little community of good men and women. It's a little bubble in here. So that's why I want you to not just focus on how you and the men that you're surrounded by think, but think a little bit about the people now outside of our bubble.
Yeah.
Okay? You saying the average guy, and I'm like, when I hear people talk about the average guy, it's not good. Or maybe I don't know. It's not good when I hear about the average guy. Don't get me wrong. I know dope dudes. Like the people that we have in our surroundings, our family and friends, they're amazing individuals. And even within the amazing individuals, there's like a few specks where you're just like, but that's not considered the average anymore, if we're honest. Well, then again, media has a way of changing our perception too. So there's that part too. Who knows?
I think I am speaking for the average good guy, and just like you're speaking about the average good girl. We're not talking about people who are, doing the most out there. The biggest complaint I hear about the average guy is that, they could be a little lazy. They got to be reminded a few times. They don't want to go an extra mile. And that's totally true. But I don't think the average guy would be that strict with his partner where he's like, this is a make or break. Like, I think ultimatums comes more from the female side. Like, this is what it needs to be or else. And usually, the men are adjusting. Not to say it doesn't go both ways, but I'm just saying, like, on average, I think that's how it works.
I feel like when it comes to dating, yes, women probably require more. But if we leave the dating phase and we're talking about you're in a committed relationship, I do think men require more.
Please elaborate.
It's just what I just said. I think women, when they're in the process of figuring out who they want to choose, they can be a little nitpicky. Like we discussed it throughout the episode. There's a lot of things that people desire that's often just a desire that's not going to do much, and they don't bring the same to the table. And I don't think men have as much as women do when it comes to the dating phase, because they probably just want like a woman who's going to respect them, treat them right, has the potential to raise their family, so on and so forth. But when dating is over and now it's a committed relationship, I don't think women request much from men compared to, I have to put the compared to, compared to how much men require from women.
That's interesting that there's a flip that happens. What do you attribute to that flip?
I think it's the fairy tale thing that we said. I think the dating phase is part of that fairy tale mindset that we women have been conditioned to think of. We want to be wined and dined, and you hope that this is your Prince Charming and he's bringing a glass slipper, and you hope that you find that guy. Like, you have butterflies in your stomach every single time you see him, batting eyes, and like I really do think that the dating phase falls in this fairy tale la la land, and then once you in it, you realize like, oh shoot. That was just the process of getting here, huh?
That'll actually be an interesting revelation if the fairy tale for women is building up to the process of marriage and the fairy tale for men is the marriage.
After, yeah. Nonetheless,
that's
I
really
feel like that
interesting.
you guys have been conditioned to not want the marriage.
Mhm.
But when you guys do get the marriage, I do think you guys require more than we do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what I listed. Like everything I listed about what men require from women, everything I listed comes after the fact.
Yeah.
It doesn't come when you're dating her.
Yeah. And I think
You
that's
know?
why when you're thinking about your standards, you want to find someone that you can't change or you don't need to change, but you can build with.
Mhm.
I think that's where the balance comes in, because I've seen it go both ways, where someone is dating someone and they have a lot of character flaws or whatever they might be, and they think, I'm going to change this person.
Right.
That's never going to work.
Yeah.
But what you want is someone who you see the potential and you can say, I see the foundation there and I could start to build on top of that.
Mhm.
Because then I think even if you'll never have that fairy tale, because there's no perfect anything,
Yeah.
it'll be easier to manage if you're building something versus you trying to change it. I heard someone say, it's in a relationship, just think about that you're both carrying the opposite ends of ropes and you want to be walking the same direction, or else you're just going to be tugging at each other,
That's
trying to
good.
go the opposite direction.
Right. I feel like people often walk into dating or relationships with the wrong expectations. And when they realize those expectations are not met because they have the mindset that they can potentially change this person, they're left disappointed. And some examples of that is like, gender roles, like what's your part within this relationship, or finances, expecting, are we doing 50-50? Is it, 70-30? Is it you pay these bills and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or even something as simple as intimacy, where one person is expecting to be more intimate than the other. So I feel like that can often cause that constant tug of war instead of walking in the same directions, because the wrong expectations are had from the beginning. And then rather than having a conversation about it, people often believe that they can cause the other individual to adapt to their desires or change according to what they want from them.
This kind of goes without saying, but I still feel like it needs to be said. I've said this to people as well, where you have to remember that you're dealing with another human being.
Right.
Part of the fairy tale is you're just imagining, what is this person going to do for me? How is this person going to fit my life? You're not thinking that person's also thinking the same thing.
Right. That's true.
I heard someone say this before, how you're not looking for a wife, you're looking for a maid. Someone to clean up your mess and fix your life. And he said, for women, you're not looking for a man, you're looking for a messiah.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a father.
But he said, but when reality hits you, you realize that the person you're with is just as messed up as you are.
Right.
So that's something that I think people don't fit in within their expectation, is whomever you're going to meet and potentially be with, they have a lot of things to work on themselves.
Just like you do.
Just like you do. And I actually learned this about people who are single, and especially people who live by themselves. They forget that they make mistakes.
Because there's no one there to hold them accountable.
Because think about it. If you're living alone, whatever you want to eat, guess what? You're eating. Whatever you want to do, you're doing. But once you're living with someone else who says, I don't feel like eating that today, all of a sudden there's a conflict, so it's all about understanding that you're dealing with another human being, and learning how to manage those expectations from that perspective.
But in the dating aspect, though, while dating, trying to find if this person suits your needs and desires, or if this person is right for you. I don't know if I said this in the beginning, but what I tend to tell people is a lot of times we think we want and need something and don't realize that we need the complete opposite to get us to where we need to be. It's kind of like life, right? A lot of the things we go through, we don't want to go through them. We don't want to deal with them, but those things lead us to where we need to be in order to grow. I view people the same way when it comes to dating or being in a relationship with them, because in reality, you're not going to get this perfect individual. You're not going to get 100% of what you want from the other person. But I guarantee you, if you're applying, you know what, let me not guarantee because I don't want to be held accountable. But I believe that if you're putting in the work to make sure that you become what you desire, and you're constantly growing to become that, as well as focusing on the attributes of the person rather than their current state, realize realizing that everyone is going through their own journey. So while you may have finished school at 22 and got into your career, and by 30, you are making great money, you're living on your own, and you drive a great car, and all those things are working out for you, there are other people who come from different backgrounds. Because like I said, I know men who got a late start, and on paper, it seems like they got a late start because they weren't doing the right things in their 20s. But if you were willing to hear out their story or spend enough time getting to know what made them get a late start, a lot of them is because they're supporting family members. They had jobs, but they felt the need to be responsible for certain bills with their parents. They stayed at home longer to support certain family members. To me, that's not a bad thing if you're starting out at 30 years old and you're not making the salary that you expect the person to make. To me, that tells me this is someone who's family oriented. And while that can sometimes be a little bit iffy because it's like you delaying yourself to help others, at the same time, he now learned and he's starting over and he's moving forward. Like, to me, those are great qualities in someone when you realize someone has made the sacrifice to benefit his family, but didn't let his family abuse him because now he's still moving forward in his 30s and humble enough to do that. Because a lot of people would fake the funk and put up a facade and make it seem like they're well off when they're not. I say all that to say all those exterior things are nice. They're great. But if you're looking for them, look for it within yourself. And that's my take on it. And get the full picture. Because like I said, there's a lot of people who have a late start and it's not because of anything they did. It's because of the hand that they were dealt. But the point is, do they have the characteristics? Do they have the skills and qualities? And if they do have those things and they do have a plan and they're taking the right steps, there's progression as well, then I don't think that should be something that's like a deal breaker.
I totally agree with that.
Thank you for spending your time with us. We hope you gained some knowledge today that'll promote poise in your life. We have new episodes uploaded every Thursday right here, same place, same time. Until next time, you can follow us on Instagram at Noirpoise Podcast to stay connected. That's NOIRPOISED Podcast. We'd love to hear your feedback.
And remember, your wisdom is power.